Hey guys, it's Brigitte with San Diego Seed Company, and today we're going to do a video all about starting your carrot seeds. Carrot seeds can be really difficult and very frustrating to grow. In fact, I think it's so crazy that every Earth Day you go to, they give kids packets of carrot seeds, which can be like one of the hardest seeds to germinate and grow. So I'm here to make that process a whole lot easier. We've got a nice little setup here because my cameraman was too lazy to go into the garden, so he wanted to have a nice close-up, but I have to agree with him. This way I can really show you the very specifics that you need to know about seed starting. So before I get into that, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button so that anytime we put out a video, you're notified. I am sure we will do a carrot update after these have sprouted, and I'll show you how to thin them. So if you hit the subscribe button, you'll be notified when that video comes out. So let's get into it. I am going to be very frank and very honest with you. I just in the last couple of years have really honed in on my carrot growing skills. For a long time, it was this crop that just baffled me. It was very frustrating. It was very hard to get good, even germination. And luckily, thanks to a friend of mine, Mr. Ed Whited, he helped me learn the really key tricks that you need to know to grow carrots well. And I'm going to share those tips with you. So we're going to plant them today in this little container. And now, although I don't really recommend doing very small containers because they have more surface area, which means they can dry out quicker and they have less soil mass to hold in moisture. This is a great demonstration to show you, and you can absolutely do this at home, but you just have to watch them often. You really have to pay attention to your containers to not let them dry out. That's key, number one, right off the bat. So whether you're planting in ground or you're planting in containers, don't let the soil dry out while your seeds are germinating. I say this all the time. Pots and containers have more surface area. What does that mean? It means that there are 5 sides and a top where hot air can circulate and pull moisture out of the soil, which means the smaller the pot, the less soil mass, the quicker it's going to dry out. Anybody who grows in containers, whether it's a large birdie's box down to a tiny little 6-inch pot, you need to understand that because that's going to make you a better grower by understanding why it dries out quicker. So I've got a little container here, and before I actually get into how to plant your carrot seeds, I want to talk about types of carrot seed. So I've pulled out our Chantenay carrots because they are nice, short, stubby little carrots that are really great for growing in harder soil or shallow containers. So this container is only like 6 to 8 inches deep. So I really don't want to grow long, huge varieties of carrots because there's just simply not going to be enough room. However, these cute little stubby little guys, they will do perfectly fine in something this size as long as I do not let it dry out. So we've got our soil in here, and I've already pre-moistened it. Now, obviously, if you're planting directly into the ground, you're not going to plant into potting mix. However, you want to make that soil that you're planting your carrots into as similar to potting mix as you possibly can, in the sense that it needs to be nice and light and fluffy. It's got tons of peat moss, it's got some perlite. Now, we want it to be light and fluffy because we do not want anything to inhibit the root growth of our carrots. We want our carrots to grow very quickly and very easily through the soil. And so if the soil is rock hard or full of rocks and sticks and things that it can't penetrate through, the carrots are not going to grow very well. In fact, they may not even germinate. So first thing you need to do, fill your container with really good potting mix. Or if you're planting directly in the ground, prep your soil really well. Soil prep for carrots is key. That means you might have to break up your soil with a broad fork. It means you might have to do some light hand tilling. You really want to make the soil as light and as fluffy as possible. If you've got really terrible soil, I love using horse manure because it is a great organic matter that's light and fluffy, and it can really boost the structure of your soil to make it more agreeable to growing carrots. So I want to share with you guys a pro tip, right? Whether you're planting in a container or in the ground, if you don't have a lot of really good quality soil, what you can do is prep the soil as best as you can and then cover the seeds with really good quality soil. Or I'm going to show you how we actually use vermiculite to cover the seeds. So I'll get into that. But let's think about the logic behind this. You want your seeds to germinate as quickly and as easily as possible, and you want them to remain moist the whole time, right? How can we do that? Well, we need to cover them with a very light, fluffy matter. Maybe it's soil, maybe it's a vermiculite or a different material. But the point is the seeds need to be covered lightly so that the tiny little seeds can germinate and poke through the soil very easily. If I were to plant these seeds, take a bunch of soil, plop it on top, they're not going to germinate. In fact, this soil has so many large chunks of perlite in it that one of these tiny little perlite pieces sitting on top of a carrot seed is going to prevent it from germinating. We actually can see here, let's look at the size of this seed. So just to give you an idea, the size of the seed, the size of that perlite. If this perlite is sitting on top of a carrot seed, that carrot seed's not going to be able to germinate. So keep that in mind. Whatever you cover the seeds with, it needs to be smaller and lighter than the seeds themselves. So a couple different ways you can do that. So in this particular container, I am going to make a furrow, and what that means is basically I'm just going to push down and make a nice little seed bed for my seeds here, and I'm just doing it with my hand. If you were doing this in the garden, I love to use the handle of a rake, or even just, you know, a long piece of wood, anything that I can use that's long, that'll give me a nice straight furrow. Now, why do we do this? Because we want to condense the soil and connect the soil particles so that capillary action can happen. What does that mean? We want moisture to be able to move freely from the bottom of the soil, where it's going to remain moist longer, up through where the seeds are. By having the soil connected, by making these furrows, we're going to guarantee that that's more likely to happen. There's not as many air pockets in there. Next, we're going to take our seeds and we are going to, this is not rocket science here, we're literally just going to sprinkle the seeds in here. You can see how many I'm sprinkling. I know I'm going to go in and thin the seeds afterwards, so it's okay that it's a little bit thick. That's another great reason why making those furrows is a good idea, so you can actually see where the seed lands. If your soil is like this and really, you know, very unfinished and it's not a good seed bed, you can't really actually see where the seed lands. In here I can see nice and neatly where all the seed lands, which is so very important. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I want to water the seeds in. Let me grab my hose here. So the next thing you want to do is put your watering on a mist. Now, if you're planting out directly into the soil, you could actually just run your drip line, which would be really nice and saturate the area. Since I'm planting into a pot, I'm going to want to water them. It's very important that I make sure that I water so that I don't spray the seeds everywhere. So what I'm going to do is water from up above, and you can actually see that I'm not spraying the seeds everywhere. They're staying in place. I'm watering them into place. I really want to make sure these are really, really moist, okay? So I got a nice good watering there. I can see that all the seeds have been really watered into place. They're stuck. They're not going anywhere, and they're completely moist. Now, what do I cover the seeds with? Well, there's a couple different ways that you can do it. You can either, and this is another pro tip, you can cover it with really good quality seed starting mix. That's because seed starting mix is very light, it's very fluffy, and it's going to guarantee that the seeds germinate very quickly. Now, even on top of covering it with this really good soil, I'm going to use some type of strainer, or a fine screen would work. And I'm doing that because I want only the finest dusting of soil on top. You can see that's all I'm going to put on top of there. It's a very light dusting of soil that's gonna hold those seeds in place. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I have said a million times, the general rule of thumb is the smaller the seed, the shallower it gets planted. And that's because the smaller the seed, the less energy it has to pop up through the soil. Carrot seeds are very small. If you cover them with too much soil, they're not going to be able to pop through the soil because they don't have enough energy to do so. So I've got a nice, very light, basically misting of soil on top. That's one way you can do it. Another way that you can do it, which is I learned from a very good friend of mine, is you can actually just use vermiculite and you can cover the seeds that way. Vermiculite is a soil additive that you use in potting mixes. It's very light, it's very fluffy, it holds in the moisture, and it will work just as well. Make sure that when you buy your vermiculite, you're buying a vermiculite that is asbestos free. I believe all brands out there are now, but just in case, it will say on there. And obviously, the vermiculite is a better method if you're doing small scale seed starting, like in this pot. That would be great. If you're doing a 100-foot row on your farm, maybe that's not a great idea. You can just use a quality potting mix or seed starting mix that you actually use a screen and you screen the soil. If your soil is really good in your garden, you could actually screen just your soil. The point is, you want a fine, light, fluffy soil on top of your seeds so that they're not obstructed when they come to germinate. Now, next we want to make sure that, again, we're going to water one more time. I'm doing this on a mist setting so that I don't spray any of the soil anywhere. I can tell you how to plant your seeds and be as successful as possible in this particular situation, but I can't control Mother Nature. If you go and you plant your seeds and you get a crazy pour down rain the next day, it can wash your seeds away. You're gonna wanna plant again. It's just an unfortunate part of being a farmer. We are at the mercy of Mother Nature. But in this particular situation, we'll water it really well. And then the next thing you wanna do is, if you're doing it in a pot, you can actually leave it in a shady location. So I'm gonna leave this underneath my patio because these seeds don't require light to germinate. They'll germinate just fine here, and if I leave them here in the shade, it's not gonna dry out as quickly, and so I don't have to watch it as closely. Now, if you either can't move your pots or if you're planting directly in the ground, a pro tip for you is to cover that area with either row cover, which we sell online on our website, or you could use burlap, you could use a piece of plywood, you could use a piece of cardboard. The whole point of that process is to keep direct sun off of the soil so that it doesn't dry out too quickly and you get seeds to germinate. Now, what I do is 5 days after I plant them, if I've planted it out in the field, I go and I lift up the row cover and I look and see. The moment that I see one seed germinating, any seed at all, I pull the row cover completely off because I know the other ones will be very quickly to follow. So those are our pro tips on growing carrots. I love carrots. I love growing carrots, eating carrots. I love carrot seed production. And this is the way that I've been growing the last several years. It's made me very successful at growing carrots, and I really hope that you try these tips at home and see how easy it can be with a few pro tips to grow your own carrots.